Imagine the faint glow of dawn breaking over misty rice paddies. A soft veil of morning fog clings to the dark outline of a village. In the distance, a rooster crows, its call muffled by the wooden walls and thatched roofs. The air is cool and carries the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. This is feudal Japan, a world of profound beauty and unforgiving hardship, where life moves to the rhythm of nature and tradition. In this meditative journey, we will walk through an entire lifetime in old Japan, from birth to death, exploring why a modern soul might struggle to last even a single day under such conditions. But fear not, our path will be gentle and immersive, a quiet stroll through history rather than a jarring jolt. As night falls in your own time, let the sounds and sensations of feudal Japan guide you toward rest. We begin in the earliest hours of life, when a new cry joins the chorus of insects and distant temple bells. Through each stage, childhood games in the dirt of a farmyard, rigorous samurai training in a clan school, toiling in rice fields under the noon sun, sharing bowls of rice and miso by the hearth at dusk, and finally fading like a lantern's glow. In old age, we will witness daily existence across social classes. Whether peasant or samurai, monk or noble, each person's days were shaped by the seasons, by duty and devotion, and by an acceptance of impermanence. Despite the poetic charm of cherry blossoms and the ethereal lull of cicadas on a summer night, life in feudal Japan was demanding in ways that are difficult to imagine today. Hard labor, strict social rules, limited medicine, and the ever-present reality of hunger or war tested the body and spirit. The average person rose before dawn, labored until their muscles ached, and rarely traveled beyond their village or district. Comforts were few, and one's conduct was bound by formal customs. In this narrative, we shall also gently compare these experiences with those of other cultures far across the seas during similar eras. The lives of medieval European villagers beneath stone castle walls, or families amid the splendors of the Islamic Golden Age, or peasants in dynastic China ploughing their ancient fields. These contrasts will be painted softly to highlight the unique fabric of Japanese life without jarring us from our restful pace. Prepare to step back through centuries. Let the modern world fall away. Feel the polished wood of an old farmhouse floor under bare feet. Hear the distant bronze bell of a hilltop shrine resonate through cedar forests. Smell the brine of the nearby sea, mingling with the sweet fragrance of blooming plum trees. Our journey will be rich in such sensory details. The warmth of an Aurori hearth fire, the rustle of silk verses, the coarseness of hemp garments, the chant of monks at midnight, the clamour of a busy marketplace at midday, all delivered in a calm, even tone, like a kindly storyteller guiding you by lantern light. With each section, we will flow chronologically, marking the quiet milestones of life. Each transition will be subtle, like turning a delicate washi paper page in a diary. By the end, we will have followed an imagined soul, perhaps not one single individual, but an amalgam of many, through the arc of existence in feudal Japan. We will understand, on a deep sensory level, why someone accustomed to modern comforts wouldn't last a day in that world. And yet, we will also come to appreciate the resilience, grace, and wisdom with which the people of that time met their everyday challenges. Now, settle in as we embark on this story-rich narration. Let the historical details and gentle descriptions wash over you. In the spirit of a bedtime chronicle, allow each image to form softly in your mind. We begin at the very dawn of life, In a remote village, as the sun's first rays peek over the mountains, a new baby's cry is about to echo in a small, candle-lit room. Dawn, birth of a life in feudal Japan. A low moan and a whispered prayer break the pre-dawn quiet inside a humble farmhouse. In a corner of the single-room cottage, separated by a hanging cloth, a woman is in labor. Her family's day usually begins with the sun, but today everyone has been awake in the dark hours, tending to the birth. A midwife, an older woman from the village, affectionately called Obasan, Granny, crouches by the laboring mother's side. Her hands, calloused from years of delivering babies, move surely and gently. In feudal Japan, nearly all births take place at home, aided by experienced women. Men, including doctors, are traditionally absent from this women's realm, as birth is considered both a sacred and perilous event. The midwife murmurs encouragement, and female relatives quietly chant Buddhist sutras or invoke the Shinto kami, spirits, for protection. Despite the calm, almost reverent atmosphere, childbirth is a time of grave risk and mystic caution. In this era, the boundary between life and death is thin, and nowhere is this more evident than in the birthing room. The Japanese believe that the act of giving life brushes close to the spirit world, a passage that can invite unwelcome entities or misfortune if not properly guarded. Tonight, our new mother is positioned in a squat, braced by the midwife and a cousin. A small Shinto talisman hangs above the doorway, and a brazier glows in the corner to warm the air. As another contraction builds, one of the attendants suddenly clashes two pieces of wood together with a sharp crack. Another attendant takes a clay dish and smashes it on the floor, its breaking meant to startle and ward off any lurking evil spirits. These abrupt sounds in the stillness serve an ancient purpose: to scare away the malevolent forces that might prey on mother or child in this vulnerable moment. To modern sensibilities, it might seem superstitious, but in feudal Japan, such rituals are second nature, woven into the fabric of everyday life. Moments later, there is a final cry of effort, and then a new cry, thin and strong, rises into the rafters. The baby is born. A collective sigh of relief is breathed by the women. The midwife, smiling broadly with relief herself, expertly clears the infant's airway and wraps the baby in a clean cotton cloth. This cloth was prepared weeks in advance, woven and sewn by the mother or grandmother. It is plain and undyed, symbolizing purity and new beginnings. For an instant, the mother and child lock into a world of their own. The midwife places the tiny baby onto the mother's chest. Tears mix with sweat on the mother's face as she laughs weakly in joy. The other women begin to quietly bustle, some tending to the afterbirth and cleaning up the blood, which will be carefully disposed of, as anything to do with birth or death is considered kegare, or ritually unclean. Others heating water over the aurori hearth for washing mother and child. In a corner, the new baby's father peeks in anxiously from behind the hanging cloth. Traditionally, he would often wait outside or in another room. In many regions of Japan, men are discouraged from witnessing childbirth directly, partly out of decorum and partly due to the belief that birth-related kegare could harm a warrior's spiritual purity. But this father is a simple farmer, not a high-born samurai, and concern overrides custom. Seeing his wife smiling tiredly and the baby wailing with healthy lungs, he presses his palms together and bows his head toward the family's modest altar shelf, where a small Buddhist figure and Shinto amulet reside side by side. The gods and Buddha have heard their prayers. Now comes the ceremonial first bath, or ubuyu. The midwife takes the infant, whose skin is still slick and reddish, and gently washes the baby in warm water, infused with certain herbs. This first bath is an important ritual. It cleanses the baby of the journey from the womb and welcomes it into the human community. Steam rises as the midwife ladles water over the squirming newborn. Despite the baby's protests, indeed, a hearty cry is seen as a good sign of strong lungs. The midwife and women smile. They wrap the baby again, this time in a fresh swaddling cloth that has been warmed by the fire, and return the little one to the mother's arms. The room's earlier tension has vanished, replaced by cooing murmurs and a few soft laughs. One woman jokingly scolds the infant. "You've kept us up all night, little one." Outside, the sky is becoming pale. A new day is beginning, the baby's first day in this world, and for the family, a day of quiet celebration. As the sun's rays slip through the cracks in the wooden shutters, the midwife begins another important task, tying and cutting the umbilical cord. She ties it off with a bit of rice straw and then severs it. The stump will be treated with ashes to help it dry. Often, families save part of the cord as a keepsake, storing it in a small wooden box. Indeed, some Japanese families will cherish that cord box for generations as a symbol of the child's bond to the mother. The afterbirth, considered impure, is swiftly buried outside under a flat stone to conceal it from any wandering spirits or animals. The women then help the mother drink some warm rice, gruel and sweet amazake, a non-alcoholic fermented rice drink, to regain her strength. She is exhausted, and her hair hangs loose, which normally would be tied up neatly. But in childbirth, such norms are relaxed. Yet her face glows with the peculiar radiance of motherhood. In a samurai mansion or a noble's household, the scene of a birth might unfold with different trappings. If we peek into a daimyo lord's residence, we would find the mother, perhaps one of several wives or concubines of the lord, attended by numerous ladies in waiting. Instead of a rustic cottage, it's a tatami-matted room in a well-appointed wing of the castle. Silk screens are erected for privacy, an auspicious tapestry or painted image of Kannon, the Buddhist bodhisattva of mercy, often invoked for safe childbirth, might be hanging nearby. Servants have brought tubs of heated water and fine white linens. The same sense of danger and ritual pervades even these high-born deliveries. An aristocratic baby is no less at risk during birth than a peasant one. In fact, historical records from the Heian court, many centuries earlier, describe similar precautions. Bowls of rice prepared to give strength, archery bows plucked to frighten evil spirits, Shinto prayers and Buddhist chants intermingling. The probability of mortality for mother or infant was high in all classes. Everyone, from the mighty warlord to the humblest farmer, understood that this moment balanced on the edge between worlds. Back in the village farmhouse, after the delivery, the focus shifts to ensuring the mother's recovery and the baby's survival. The new mother is kept warm and at rest. According to tradition, she will stay in the household's inner area, perhaps the same room, for several weeks, venturing out as little as possible. Blood loss and the intense effort have left her weak, and the concept of kegare, impurity, means she should avoid religious sites for a time. The women tuck her in with quilts and place a brazier nearby to chase away the lingering chill of dawn. The baby, now sated with its first taste of mother's milk, has fallen asleep with tiny fists curled. Outside, news of the birth travels quickly through the close-knit community. A neighbor, chopping wood, pauses when he hears the faint wail of the newborn carry from the house. He nods to himself and smiles. Another soul has joined their village. In feudal Japan, villages are like extended families. Soon, other neighborhood women will drop by with congratulations and help, maybe bringing pickled plums or fresh greens as nourishment for the mother. Custom dictates a simple celebration on the 7th night after birth called Oshichiya. On that night, the family will formally name the baby, writing the chosen name in calligraphy on a piece of paper and placing it on the household Shinto altar. This ceremony marks the infant's entry into the human community and its departure from the uncertain world of spirits that newborns are thought to straddle until that first week passes. A special fish dish might be prepared as part of the celebration, often a sea bream if available, since its Japanese name Tai makes a lucky pun with Meditai, auspicious. After about 30 days, when the mother has recovered enough strength and the baby seems healthy, there will be another quiet ritual, the Miyamairi, the baby's first visit to the local Shinto shrine. In the crisp morning, the proud father or grandmother will carry the infant, swaddled and perhaps dressed in a tiny kimono, to the shrine to present the child to the Ujigami, the guardian deity of their community. The priest, if the shrine has one visiting, or perhaps just the family, if no priest is present, offers prayers for the child's health and long life. A small charm or amulet might be given to hang by the baby's sleeping area for protection. The shrine visit formally welcomes the child under the protection of the gods, marking the end of the most dangerous period for newborns. In truth, infant mortality is tragically common. Many infants do not survive those first vulnerable months, but for now, this child has passed its first milestones, and hope runs high in the family's hearts. As we leave this scene, we note how different childbirth is here compared to other parts of the world in this era. In a medieval European village around the same time, a birth might also happen at home with midwives and relatives. European midwives had their own set of folk practices, perhaps a prayer to Saint Margaret, the patron of childbirth, or a belief in witches interfering with newborns. But the Japanese approach is distinctly syncretic, blending Buddhist chants, Shinto talismans, and folk superstitions in a seamless tapestry. Unlike in Europe, there is no single church doctrine guiding births. Instead, centuries of local custom and imported Chinese and Indian beliefs mix together. What is common across cultures is the female-centric nature of birth in both East and West at this time. Bringing life into the world is seen as women's sacred work, with men largely in the background. The Japanese even had proverbs about the fortitude of mothers. One could also look to the Islamic world of the Middle Ages. In, say, Baghdad or Cordoba, learned physicians wrote texts on obstetrics, but still, births were usually overseen by midwives and family. The knowledge of the day was limited everywhere. No antibiotics, no modern surgery. A difficult birth was life-threatening, no matter if one was in a castle in Kyoto, a manor in France, or a desert town in Arabia. The difference in Japan was the heavy overlay of ritual purity concerns. Even after birth, the mother in Japan was considered in a state of defilement, kegare, for a period, requiring purification rites and avoidance of holy places. This notion of spiritual pollution had parallels in some Hindu and Islamic practices, but in medieval Christian Europe, the idea of childbirth as polluting was less formally codified, though a churching ceremony for mothers did exist. But let us return to our quiet country home. The baby's first cries have subsided into soft breaths. Outside, the village is stirring. Other mothers suckle infants. Farmers head to the fields. Roosters crow again. The midwife, having ensured mother and child are stable, takes her leave to go rest. She'll check in later. As she steps out, the father presses into her hands a small bag of rice or a few coins wrapped in paper as a token of gratitude. Midwives in Japan are deeply respected. They are colloquially known as granny who delivers life. In fact, such is the esteem for their role that in some domains of feudal Japan, a midwife on her way to a birth could even stop a lord's procession without punishment. A remarkable privilege in a society obsessed with social rank. If a midwife declared she must reach a laboring mother urgently, samurai guards would allow her to pass, even as common folk ordinarily had to prostrate themselves and clear the road for a lord. Such is the value placed on the arrival of new life. The midwife disappears down the dirt path in the growing light, her figure small against vast rice fields glistening with morning dew. In the house behind us, the new family drifts into a much-needed sleep, mother and baby bundled together under a patchwork quilt. The ordeal of birth has ended, and a different journey begins, nurturing this child through an unpredictable world. Ahead lies the tender innocence of childhood, which in feudal Japan is both cherished and all too brief. The sun climbs higher. We carry with us the image of that tiny newborn, so fragile yet so significant, as we step forward in time to see how children grow and thrive, or sometimes fail to, in this era. Childhood, the early years under the shogun's sky. The scene shifts to a bright spring afternoon a few years later. Petals from blooming cherry trees dance on the breeze, drifting down onto the packed earth yard of a farmhouse. A toddler, perhaps 2 years old, waddles after a chicken, giggling with pure delight. His face is smudged with dirt. He's been making tiny mud dolls with the other children. Nearby, his mother watches while pounding steamed rice in a mortar to make soft rice cakes for the spring festival. She keeps one eye on the little one. Children in this world are precious, but everyday life leaves little time for coddling. Still, for the first few years, children are given a long leash. There's a folk saying that captures the parenting style. Until a child is 7, they belong to the gods. In other words, very young children are indulged and not yet held to adult standards of discipline, as if they are still half in the realm of spirits, until around the age of 7, our young toddler has survived the most perilous early phase and is now a sturdy boy with a round belly and curious eyes. He wears a simple little kimono of indigo-dyed cotton, tied loosely at the waist, and no footgear. Bare feet slap on the ground happily. In many Japanese villages of this time, small children, boys and girls alike, often have their heads shaved except for a few cute patches of hair, a practical hairstyle to keep cool and reduce lice, while also marking them as clearly children. This boy has a tuft of hair left in a top knot-like sprout. He tumbles and crawls with the scrawny village dog, who is extremely tolerant of grabby little hands. During infancy, this child's world was mostly the arms of his mother or sisters, but now he toddles freely in the communal space of the village. Often, a gaggle of children from toddler to about 6 years old are left to play together under the semi-watchful eyes of elders or older siblings, while parents labor. In this close-knit rural society, neighbors collectively supervise youngsters. It takes a village, as the saying goes. The children amuse themselves with improvised toys. Twigs become imaginary horses. Pebbles are counters for a game. Straw strands woven into grasshoppers or tiny dolls. They play samurai and bandits, chasing each other with sticks for swords, echoing tales they've heard. Childhood in feudal Japan includes moments of carefree play very much like anywhere else, though the nature around them provides the playground rather than manufactured items. A favorite pastime might be to find a shallow part of the river and splash about on a hot day, or to hunt for small frogs and insects in the rice paddies. The patience for such activity is perhaps why many children become adept at catching cicadas or crickets with threads to keep as pets in little cages. One little girl, about 5, holds up a delicate toy she's made. It's a Jerfunchur, Kamifusen, a paper balloon. Actually, perhaps her mother or older brother made it for her by pasting washi paper, and now she blows it up and bats it around. Another common toy is a spinning top, whittled out of wood. Older boys might have carved some and taught the younger ones how to snap the tops into motion with a twist of cord. We see one boy furrowing his brow as he carefully winds a string around his top, then yanks. The top drops and whirls on the ground. The other children clap. Such simple joys mark the days. If we wander to the fringes of the village, perhaps near the Shinto shrine grove, we might encounter a kindergarten of nature. Here, older children, around 7 or 8, mind their toddler siblings, while also doing light chores, gathering firewood sticks, pulling weeds to feed the family goat, or scaring away birds from the vegetable patch. It's play and work mixed seamlessly. A crow caws from the shrine's Torii gate, as if scolding them to stay out of mischief. For these kids, the boundaries of imagination and reality are blurry. Forest spirits might be hiding under the shrine's holy rocks, and monsters from folklore, like the kappa in the river or the tengu in the mountains, are both thrilling and a bit frightening to contemplate. Parents and grandparents often use these folk tales to gently teach and warn. For instance, a child straying too close to the river might be told, "Don't go alone," or the kappa might pull you under. Yet at the same time, everyone leaves a cucumber as an offering to appease the kappa, a mix of caution and respect for the unseen. The early childhood years are also marked by a series of festivals and little milestones that celebrate growth. The most famous is Shichi-go-san, 753, a festival each November to honor girls aged 3 and 7, and boys aged 5, and sometimes 3. If our toddler boy were to reach age 5, his parents would dress him in a tiny version of hakama trousers, and perhaps for the first time, allow him to wear a bit of the family crest. They would pry him to the shrine to give thanks that he's growing strong. Little girls at 7 might don a kimono with an obi sash for the first time, instead of simple cords, symbolizing their step toward womanhood. But in the remote country, these observances might be informal, a simple prayer and special sweets. More universally, all children, regardless of year, celebrate Children's Day in spring. In this era, it's separated into Boys' Day on the 5th day of the 5th lunar month, around May, and Girls' Day on 3rd day of the 3rd month, March. Boys' Day, Tango no Seku, sees koinobori, carp-shaped streamers, flying above many households. You can imagine, on a bright May morning, colourful cloth carp flapping against the sky, one carp for each son in the family. The carp is a symbol of perseverance, swimming upstream, and is hoped to inspire boys to be brave and strong. Our village's boys might run under the carp windsocks, pretending they are big fish themselves. Girls' Day. Hina. Matsuri in March involves displaying sets of dolls representing an imperial court. In a wealthier home, perhaps the village headman's, little girls will delight in arranging beautiful dolls of the prince and princess and their courtiers, decked in Heian period robes. In a poor farmhouse, a girl might only have a simple handmade doll, but she will treasure it, and perhaps her mother will fashion paper kimono for it. These festivals punctuate the children's year with excitement and candy, like Chitose Ame, thousand-year candy, long red and white sticks given during Shichigo-san for longevity. Despite these joys, childhood in feudal Japan is not uniformly easy or protected. By around age 7, children are expected to start assuming small but real responsibilities. A boy of 7 might be out in the fields as a scarecrow boy, literally standing and waving a noisemaker to chase birds from the rice seedlings. A girl of the same age might be trailing her mother, learning to carry her baby sibling on her back while the mother works, or helping pound grain, wash clothes in the river, or gather kindling. It's common to see an older sister, herself not yet 10, carrying a toddler sibling tightly bound to her back with a cloth wrap, a living baby sling. The patience and endurance Japanese children develop is often remarked upon by observers. They learn by imitation and gentle correction. If a child drops a piece of firewood from their bundle, a parent might smile and say, "Ah, you've left something for the tanuki," mischievous raccoon dog spirit. "Pick it up now, or he'll think it's a gift." Education for peasant children in the early Edo period is mostly practical and at home. They learn how to plant rice by following behind their parents in the paddies, pressing seedlings into mud. They learn how to fish by tagging along with elders to the stream, how to watch the clouds for rain signs, and how to bow respectfully to any traveling samurai. Crucial lesson for survival in a world of strict social hierarchies. Formal schooling for commoners is rare in the 16th, 17th centuries, but by the 18th, 19th century, temple schools, terrakoya, become more common in many areas, teaching basic literacy and numeracy to town and village children. In our scenario, maybe by the late 1700s, our village might have a kindly Buddhist monk or a literate ronin, masterless samurai, who teaches a few kids their hiragana syllabary and how to use an abacus during the slack season. But at the time of our story, which floats broadly through the feudal era, we can imagine the vast majority of peasant children do not attend a formal school. Their school is the farm, the forest, the home. Now, life for children of the samurai class or nobility follows a different track. Let's shift our perspective for a moment to a bustling castle town. Inside the fortified manor of a minor daimyo, a 5-year-old boy sits kneeling in a crisp little kimono, trying hard to hold a brush properly. His tutor, a stern man with the top knot and 2 swords marking him as a samurai, guides the child's hand in forming the Chinese character for spring on paper. The boy is the daimyo's second son. At this tender age, he's already begun basic lessons, writing Chinese characters, kanji, memorizing some Confucian maxims, and physical conditioning. Earlier that day, he and other samurai children practiced walking on the balancing logs in the courtyard to build steadiness, and perhaps played a game of bow and arrow with safe padded arrows to start developing aim. For samurai families, education is both mental and martial from early on. By age 7, a boy might begin training with a real, though small, wooden sword. In fact, one could say childhood ends earlier for samurai offspring. Discipline is instilled young because they carry the clan's honor. There is an old custom that, at around age 5-7, samurai boys were allowed to wear hakama, formal trousers, for the first time in a ceremony, signifying they are no longer infants, but stepping into boyhood with expectations of manliness to come. Samurai and noble girls in castle towns also receive schooling, though of a different nature. Picture a samurai residence where a group of young girls, ages perhaps 6 to 12, sit in Caesar, kneeling position, learning to play the koto, a classical zither. Their instructor is an older lady of the court, and she gently corrects their hand positions. Apart from music, these girls are taught writing, calligraphy, reading classical poetry, maybe a bit of painting, and certainly etiquette. How to serve tea, how to bow properly, how to speak with appropriate modesty. One might think their education is entirely in refined arts, but samurai girls also absorbed the ethos of strength. There are historical accounts that women of samurai families were expected to be brave and could even handle weapons if needed. In some domains, girls practiced with the naginata, a polearm, as a form of exercise, and so they could defend their home if men were away. However, such martial training for girls was not universal. It depended on family values and the security situation. More common was ensuring a girl knew how to manage a household, as she would one day be the steward of her own samurai home. Part of her curriculum would be shadowing her mother in supervising servants, planning the household budget, and perhaps learning herbal remedies to care for family illnesses. For noble children at the imperial court or high-ranking samurai, play could be more elaborate. They might have beautifully crafted toys, lacquered dolls, tiny suits of armor, even imported curiosities. In the Edo period, for instance, wealthy urban families sometimes bought their children mechanical toys known as karakuri ningyo, little automatons that could serve tea or shoot tiny arrows, an entertainment and marvel. But at heart, a child is a child. One imagines that even a young prince in Kyoto might secretly prefer running outside, chasing dragonflies, to practicing his calligraphy strokes for the 100th time. Whether high-born or low-born, Japanese children have one thing in common. They live close to nature and family, with little concept of individual privacy that we have today. At night, they sleep alongside siblings on woven mats or straw beds, huddling for warmth in winter under shared quilts. They hear lullabies softly sung. A famous traditional lullaby from Edo times goes, "Nen, neko, urawa ni negasuto, ombo wa yoi, koda, nene shina." Sleep, sleep. If you sleep well, you will be a good child. So sleep now. The lullaby might be sung by a tired mother who is herself nodding off while rocking the cradle made of a woven basket. Perhaps grandmother joins in humming. Fireflies blink outside the lattice window. A pine torch or an oil lamp flickers inside, casting dancing shadows. These gentle moments of childhood at day's end are universal and timeless. However, not all children are fortunate enough to enjoy a long, idyllic childhood. This era can be cruel. Illness especially preys on the young. A simple cough can turn into pneumonia. Smallpox periodically sweeps through villages. There is a poignant cemetery at a temple not far from our village, where tiny stone markers indicate where children were laid to rest, often without ceremony, as heartbroken parents tried to move on. Families in feudal Japan often had many children, but expected that not all would reach adulthood. It was an unspoken strategy to have extra, knowing the gods might call some back early. When disease strikes, mothers might rush a feverish child to the shrine to get a talisman, or hang a poem to the god of healing on their gate. Buddhist beliefs help frame these losses. They say a child who dies young may have been a Buddha in a previous life, come only briefly. That might console some, but the grief is no less real. In a hushed tone, an elder might recall the bad measles outbreak of a decade ago that took half the village's little ones. This is one reason why those who survived to, say, age 10 were celebrated. Each year alive was a blessing. Another shadow over childhood is the possibility of being sent away or adopted out due to economic hardship. A poor family might give a child to a richer household as a servant or apprentice. For example, a bright 8-year-old boy could be sent to the town to apprentice under a merchant or craftsman, essentially to reduce the mouths to feed at home and give the boy a chance at a trade. A young girl might be adopted by a childless aunt in another village. These partings are often tearful, but done out of necessity. In the worst cases, poverty could drive a practice known as mabiki, literally thinning, a cruel term that referred to infanticide, usually by exposure, when a family absolutely could not support another infant. This was a dark secret in some rural areas during famine times or when consecutive children were born female in a society that preferred male heirs. Such tragedies were not spoken of loudly, and our story will not dwell on them in detail as we keep a peaceful tone. Yet it underscores why many infants and children are cherished dearly. Each one that lives is a triumph over high odds. Let us leave behind those somber possibilities and return to the path of our representative child. Suppose he is that peasant boy we saw chasing chickens, now a bit older, say around 7 years old. He's reached an important cultural threshold. In this Japanese tradition, at 7, a child is thought to fully join the human community as the gods return them, in a sense, to their parents. The boy's parents decide it's time for his first haircut ceremony. They invite the village barber, or perhaps just the father takes scissors to snip the little top-knot tuft he wore as a toddler. He will now grow his hair out a bit differently, perhaps gradually training it into the shaved pate and top-knot style of men. It's a symbolic moment, akin to a little coming of age. In some regions, this might coincide with the Shichi-go-san festival, if the timing aligns. Having passed this stage, our boy starts to accompany his father more seriously to learn farming. Early one summer morning, he trudges behind his father to the rice paddies, carrying a light bundle of seedlings. The mud is cool between his toes. Dragonflies skim the water's mirror-like surface. His father shows him how to space the seedlings, just so in each flooded row. It's tedious work for a child, and soon enough, he's distracted by a frog leaping near his feet. The father gently nudges him back to focus. Every stalk of rice counts, he might say. By noon, the boy is napping under a tree, worn out, and that's okay. He's still a child. But by involving him in work, the family ensures he gradually internalizes the rhythms of their livelihood. Let's peek now at a samurai child of similar age, around 7, perhaps the second son of a clan officer in the same domain. This young samurai in training has been told that next spring, at age 8, he will attend the domain's school, if it exists, or start rigorous study under a tutor. In preparation, his father has begun taking him to the dojo training hall every morning. Imagine the scene. At dawn, within the castle barracks, a few boys with freshly shaven top knots try to emulate their elder brothers as they practice drawing wooden swords. They stand in their short-length kimonos, legs apart, concentrating furiously. A drill instructor barks out counts. Are they fierce? Perhaps in their minds. In reality, A couple of them still have chubby child hands and can barely lift a practice sword without wobbling. It's both comical and endearing. But the point is not to make them warriors overnight. It's to instill discipline, balance, and familiarity so that by their teens, it's second nature. After an hour, they will be off to practice, writing, and reading. Unlike the peasant boy's free play, the samurai boy's day is more structured. Nonetheless, even samurai children find moments of play. Maybe they roll wooden hoops in the castle courtyard, or have pet crickets in tiny cages that they feed and race. Notably, they learn things like the game of Go, an abstract strategy board game, or shogi, Japanese chess, early on, as these sharpen tactical thinking. You might peek into a corridor and see two little boys hunched over a Go board, placing black and white stones in serious silence, though it wouldn't be surprising if now and then they break into a scuffle over a disputed move, only to be admonished by a servant to behave like young gentlemen. Meanwhile, girls at age 7 or so, in both villages and samurai homes, are starting to take on gendered roles. A peasant girl might already be helping her mother weave cloth or learn to sew patches on the family's worn clothes. She watches and imitates how her mother makes tofu or miso. Perhaps she's given a small plot of the vegetable garden as hers, to tend beans or flowers, to teach responsibility. In samurai or merchant families, a girl might begin learning to cook rice properly, or the painstaking art of dressing herself in a kimono without too much help. Up until now, others dressed her, but soon she'll be expected to manage the layers and tying of her garments more independently. She might practice on simpler yukata, cotton robes at first. Around this time, upper-class girls also partake in the charming tradition of hinamatsuri, Doll's Day, each year setting up the tiered display of dolls with her mother, carefully handling each ornate figure. While ostensibly a fun ritual, it's also training in aesthetics, care, and ritual observance. In all classes, around the start of adolescence, Japanese children undergo formal rites of passage that clearly mark the end of childhood. This is different from many modern societies, where the line is blurrier. Here it is ceremonial and decisive. We will delve into those in the next section. But for now, in these scenes of childhood, we see that feudal Japanese childhood is a mix of indulgence and early maturity. Compared to a child in medieval Europe, our Japanese village youth likely has more freedom to roam in early years. European peasant children also played, but some were put to work, even younger in apprenticeships or as shepherds. In terms of hygiene and diet during childhood, our Japanese child is probably reasonably clean by pre-modern standards. He often bathes with his family in the local bathhouse, or a tub at home if they can heat water. Japanese culture values bathing, and even children are scrubbed often, a stark contrast to many European children of the time, who might get washed far less frequently. Diet-wise, a village child shares the family's simple meals of rice, or millet, barley mix, miso soup, and pickles. He likely doesn't experience sweets often, except maybe some fruit or a bit of syrup on festival days, whereas a European child might eat coarse bread and pottage daily, perhaps tasting honey or rare sugar occasionally. Both likely suffered nutritional deficiencies at times. Japanese peasant diets could lack animal protein and fats. European peasants could face vitamin deficiencies in winters. But interestingly, accounts suggest Japanese diets with soybeans, fish, and vegetables gave them a relatively balanced nutrition. Indeed, historians note that Japanese commoners often consumed protein-rich soy, tofu, miso, and a variety of wild plants, arguably faring better nutritionally than many European counterparts surviving on mostly bread and gruel. Our village boy might not eat meat often due to Buddhist influence and cost, but he gets protein from soy and fish, and is usually not starving, unless famine strikes. Childhood also differs in religious atmosphere. In Europe, a child grows up under the watch of the church, learning Christian prayers and seeing the village priest weekly, whereas in Japan, religion is part of daily life in a less centralized way. The child bows at the family altar each morning, observes Shinto festivals, hears Buddhist sutras at funerals, but there's no single Sunday school equivalent. Morality lessons come through family and Confucian ideas, like filial piety, more than through clergy for the average person. Still, a child in a temple school might memorize ethical lessons such as be respectful to elders, be honest, do not lie, very similar to maxims anywhere. As the sun sets on our child's early years, we imagine him and his siblings catching the last light to play tag among the houses. Mothers call out names one by one as supper is ready, perhaps not with a loud yell that would be improper in many Japanese communities, where even speaking volume is moderated, but with a stepping outside and clapping of hands or ringing a little bell. Children scamper home, hair tousled, feet dirty, eyes shining. They eat with their family around the irori fire, sharing laughter as the child recounts how he fought a tengu with his stick to him. It was very real. Father chuckles and tells him to eat up so he'll grow strong like Momotaro, the Peach Boy hero of folklore. Finally, under the light of an oil lamp, our child falls asleep to the gentle swaying motion of his mother, fanning the mosquitoes away. Perhaps he dreams of samurai and monsters, or simply of the sound of the wind in the bamboo. Childhood in feudal Japan is coming to an end for him. All too soon, he will step into the next chapter, a more formal coming of age, leaving behind the innocence of games for the responsibilities of youth. The transition is marked by ceremonies and profound changes in how society treats the individual. Let us gently turn the page to that chapter, keeping the same calm gaze as our narrative continues. Coming of age, rights and responsibilities. The scene now opens on a crisp autumn day in a mountain shrine. The maples have turned fiery red, and leaves crunch underfoot. A procession of people climbs the stone steps to the shrine courtyard. At the center is a young samurai boy of about 15 years, flanked by his father and two uncles. The boy's head is freshly shaven on the top front portion, accentuating his forelock pulled into a small top knot at the back, a new hairstyle for him, the sakayaki style that signifies manhood. He wears a ceremonial outfit that feels awkward on his growing frame, layers of silk kimono in subdued colors, and a stiff black eboshi cap on his head, or perhaps even a small armor and helmet if this is a martial family. His face is solemn, trying to hide both pride and nervousness. Today is his genpuku, the coming-of-age ceremony for samurai youths. In feudal Japan, coming of age is not a nebulous concept. It is formalized in ceremonies around the early teen years, for boys roughly between 12 and 17, often about 15, for girls often around 13-16. The genpuku for boys, and a corresponding ceremony sometimes called mogi or onamonoimi for girls mark the moment a child officially becomes an adult in society's eyes. It's a pivotal rite that transforms their clothing, hairstyle, name, and social status in one sweep. At the shrine, our young samurai kneels before the altar. Incense wafts in thin trails, A Shinto priest intones prayers to the kami for the boy's health and dedication. Then, the boy's lord, or a high-ranking sponsor, it could be the daimyo himself, or a senior retainer, steps forward with a lacquered box. Inside is a yoroi bitsu, a piece of armor, perhaps a helmet, along with an adult name, scroll. As part of genpuku, the youth will be given a new name, often one character from his father's or patron's name, signifying his entry into adulthood and his alignment with the clan's lineage. The sponsor gently places the samurai helmet on the boy's head or hands it to him. This is symbolic of him donning adult attire, cap or helmet. The boy bows deeply. He then receives a short sword from his father, the first real wakizashi that he can wear. Traditionally, after genpuku, a boy is allowed to wear the two swords of a samurai, the long katana and short wakizashi, when appropriate, and can fight in battle if needed. Essentially, he's being told, "You are now one of us," a full member of the warrior class with its duties and privileges. Watching this, one cannot help but feel how suddenly youth ends for samurai boys. Just yesterday, he may have been practicing calligraphy and being scolded for slouching. Tomorrow, he could, in theory, be sent to the battlefield, especially in the Warring States era. After the ceremony, he will sit at the celebratory feast, trying to comport himself as an adult, drinking perhaps a taste of sake with the men, speaking when spoken to, no longer allowed to frolic with the children. There's a weight on his shoulders, but also a glow in his heart. This is what he was raised for. If we listen in, an older samurai might be giving him advice. Walk as if your ancestors watch you. Speak little. Do much. Uphold the family honor. The boy nods seriously. Now, samurai are not the only ones with coming-of-age rituals. Commoner boys and girls also had simpler variants, though often less documented. In many villages, a boy around 15 might go through a ritual at the local shrine to mark his passage. It could be as simple as being given adult clothes by his parents and joining the men for work and in the communal decision-making. He might start wearing his hair like a man shaved pate, if that style is prevalent in his region and time. Interestingly, by late Edo, even peasants sometimes imitated samurai hairstyle. The village could have a brief gathering where the boy offers sake to the shrine and elders drink with him for first time. For a girl, reaching marriageable age, mid-teens, was often the marker. There wasn't a unified girls' genpuku across all areas, but the term mogi refers to a dress ceremony where a girl puts on adult women's kimono, complete with the wide obi, and does the teeth blackening and eyebrow plucking that adult women of the time expected. Yes, in feudal Japan, beauty and maturity were signified by practices like ohaguro, blackened teeth, and hikimayu, removing eyebrows and painting on fine ones higher on the forehead, for women. So imagine a girl of 14 inches, a merchant's household, or maybe a high farmer's family. She sits by the hearth as her mother carefully paints her teeth with a concoction of iron filings and vinegar that stains them a glossy black. The girl tries not to wince at the astringent taste. This custom, strange to modern eyes, is thought to make a woman's smile beautiful and demure. White teeth were considered flashy, and it also served a practical purpose of preventing tooth decay. She has her eyebrows shaved off and redrawn as delicate arcs high on her forehead in the classical style, and her hair is styled in a more elaborate coiffure, perhaps with a decorative comb. Once transformed, she dons a formal kimono, maybe a hand-me-down from her mother, or a newly sewn one if the family can afford it, and steps out to present herself to the community at New Year or a local festival, people will compliment, "Oh, you've become an adult lady now." She will bow and from that day speak a bit more softly and refer to herself with the more grown-up terms. In essence, after Mogi, she is expected to put aside childish things and prepare for marriage and running a household. Indeed, many girls were betrothed or even married in the mid to late teens, so adulthood for them came early. For commoner boys, one significant change at coming of age might be joining the youth association of the village, if one exists. Many rural villages had an organization of the young unmarried men sometimes, called wakamonogumi or similar, who would take on tasks like festival arrangements, village night watch, and helping families in need. Before coming of age, a boy isn't part of that group. Afterwards, he is expected to contribute. It's a bit akin to joining the workforce or community roster. Often, there might be a little revelry. The newly of age youth might be the center of a rowdy but good-natured initiation, perhaps involving him drinking sake and likely getting tipsy for the first time to laughter and pats on the back. One can imagine on a winter's night after rice harvest, in a rustic village dojo hall or someone's barn, the young men gather. They make the 5-year-old stand up and down, a bowl of sake in one go. He coughs and sputters as they cheer. Someone hands him a tabi, traditional socks, as a gag gift, saying, "For the strides you'll take as a man." Another might jokingly give him a small bundle of straw, saying, "Now you can weave your own sandals." It's all in fun, but underlying it is the reinforcement of, "You're one of us now." Likewise, for a commoner girl, aside from the dressing ceremony, there might be communal acknowledgement at perhaps the shrine's annual festival. She might dance in the group dance for the first time wearing adult kimono, or carry a portion of the mikoshi, portable shrine, with the women. The older ladies might start calling her "O-ne-san," older sister, instead of "O-ne-chan," little girl. She'll be allowed or expected to help in the kitchen during big feasts, rather than playing with the children outside. In the cities, coming of age had its own flavor. In Edo, Old Tokyo, for example, townsfolk might celebrate their children's coming of age, which by late Edo was often aligned around ages 15-17 too, by taking them to a temple or shrine, getting them new clothes, and registering their new status. The age of legal adulthood in samurai law was sometimes considered 15 for boys, meaning they could inherit property or samurai rank then. For girls, it was tied to marriage. Some laws said women should ideally marry by 20, but many married earlier by arrangement. Cross-culturally, one can compare. In medieval Europe, a boy might become a squire or apprentice around 14. A girl might be considered marriageable by early teens, but there wasn't a single rite like genpuku. There were knighting ceremonies for noble boys, around 1 later than genpuku, and confirmations, or bar, bat mitzvah, in other cultures, but Japan's coming of age stands out for its dramatic change in appearance and name. In our gentle comparative lens, we might note that in Europe, there was no equivalent of changing one's name at adolescence unless entering a religious order. In Japan, however, it's common for samurai to take new names at genpuku. Our young samurai might have been called Kenta as a child, and now takes on the formal name Matsudera Kagekatsu or something, lofty, sometimes bestowed by his lord. This would be like a European squire being suddenly dubbed Sir So-and-so at 15, which didn't happen. They usually waited till to 21 to be knighted. So Japanese youth become adults faster in some regards. Returning to our narrative flow, After the Genpuku ceremony at the shrine, the samurai youth steps outside into the autumn sunlight. He instinctively straightens his back more than before, aware that he's being seen in a new light. His mother and sisters, who observed from the side, now come and bow to him. Even his mother treats him with a bit more formality, as he's now a man of the house. But then she embraces him, briefly, when no one but family is looking, with teary pride in her eyes. He is handed a pair of swords to tuck into his obi, the daisho, long and short sword pair. They might not be very expensive ones, but they are his. The weight at his side feels strange, yet empowering. He has long dreamed of wearing swords, like his father. Now he must carry them honorably. Elsewhere, our village boy, now a lanky 6-year-old, finishes his simple coming-of-age rite at the shrine with his parents and a few neighbors. Perhaps the village elder gave him a new adult hat or a sash as a symbol. He bows, flush with pride. There might not be immediate drastic changes in his daily routine. He was already working in fields. But psychologically, he stands taller. He is allowed a seat at the evening gatherings of men, where village matters are discussed. One night, as they sit around a hibachi brazier outside someone's house, a matter comes up. Say, repairing the irrigation canal. The elder looks at the newly adult youth and asks, "What do you think, Ichiro? Can you and the other young ones handle the digging?" Ichiro, our boy's name, perhaps, nods vigorously. Hi. It's the first time he's been directly asked to take on community work without being told, and he feels a thrill of responsibility. What about our young lady? At 15, she perhaps has a small celebration at home. Her mother and aunt helped her with the ohaguro earlier in the day. Now in the evening, they host a modest feast with some relatives. She wears a beautiful homongi kimono, borrowed from her older sister. The family serves festive dishes: red rice with beans for good luck, grilled fish, maybe some sake that she sips shyly. Her father, not usually an emotional man, gives a little speech. "Our daughter is grown. We are proud of how you help your mother and how you carry yourself. Soon, you will have your own household, but wherever you go, remember, you carry our family's values." She lowers her eyes respectfully and promises to be a good wife and wise mother, echoing the Confucian-influenced ideal of womanhood that is taught. In her heart, she may feel both excitement and anxiety. She knows that likely within a year or two, she will be married off. Perhaps there is already a young man from a neighboring village whose parents have been in talks with hers. Tonight, though, she is fated as the star. Her little brothers and sisters gaze at her almost like a stranger, amused by her black teeth and changed eyebrows. She laughs and chases them jokingly, saying, "Don't stare." Already, she is practicing being the gentle elder sibling who will discipline the younger ones when mother isn't around. With these transformations, our character's youth has effectively ended and adulthood begins. But there is a transitional quality to late teen years in any era. Though considered adults, 6-year-olds are still learning the ropes of grown-up life. The newly minted samurai might be sent to an official samurai school now to continue training. For instance, the Aizu domain's famous Nishinkan school took in samurai boys around age 10 and kept them through late teens, training them in both academics and martial arts. If our youth hadn't joined earlier, he might join now, after Genpuku for finishing touches. There he will wake at dawn, study Confucian classics, practice archery, swordsmanship, horse riding, and even swimming in armor to build endurance. The school instills strict rules. Obey elders. Don't lie. Don't bully. Don't be cowardly. These values echo what he's heard at home, but now enforced by peers and masters. They even teach the morbid skill of seppuku, ritual suicide, as a concept, the ultimate act of samurai resolve. Nishinkan historically did instruct youth on how to face death, and indeed, some teenagers of the Byakutai would tragically take their own lives in 1868 out of loyalty. For now, though, our youth is just practicing writing death poems, not expecting to need it soon. Our village young man also steps into heavier work. He travels with other villagers to repair a distant irrigation channel for several days, camping out, an adventure that marks him as one of the fellows. One night, by the campfire, a senior worker starts singing a nostalgic folk song about a faraway lover or the beauty of the moon on rice fields. The young men join in, our friend too, though he fumbles some lyrics. These are moments where youth bonds and the oral culture passes on. The songs, the stories of village ancestors, ghost tales to scare each other, like Kuchisake Onna, the slit-mouthed woman who appears on lonely roads, a relatively new tale in Edo times, or older yokai tales. They laugh and shiver by turns, feeling very grown up that no parents are around. The young woman, in turn, is now allowed to attend events with adult women. She goes to a group silk reeling gathering, where women collectively spin silk threads from cocoons, a cottage industry. Some villagers do. As they work, they gossip softly. She hears Frank talk about marriage, childbirth, things previously hushed in front of children. Her cheeks flush at some of the topics, but she pretends to focus on the silk. An older woman chuckles and says, "Don't worry, dear. You'll understand soon enough. Maybe by next year you'll have a fine husband snoring next to you." They all giggle, and she musters a polite smile. This female bonding and mentoring is key. Older women teach the younger how to navigate married life, often in these informal settings. From a cross-cultural perspective, one might consider how these adolescents are being prepared for adult roles. In Japan, clearly defined roles await. The samurai youth will serve his lord or the shogun's government. The peasant youth will farm and take on family duties. The young woman will marry and run a home. In medieval Europe, similarly, a 5-year-old boy might be working a farm or learning a trade. A girl might be helping in domestic tasks intensively or already wed. So, in both East and West, adolescence was short and functional. The big difference is the ceremony. Europe's peasant might have a church confirmation around 1-2R, religious, coming of age in a way, but it's not as socially definitive as Genpuku, which directly confers adult status. The strong group cohesion in Japanese society is seen in how these rites emphasize community acknowledgement and integration. A newly adult person is formally welcomed into the adult community, with sake, new clothes, new name, etc. Whereas in many Western locales, adulthood just kind of happened gradually, or at marriage. Now, having crossed this threshold, our characters stand on the brink of full adult life. They are about to enter the busiest decades of life, working, marrying, raising children of their own, facing wars and famines as they come, serving their lord or community, cooking and crafting, praying and persevering. This next stage will reveal why life in feudal Japan could break a modern person. The sheer labor, the strict social expectations, the limited agency, especially for women and lower classes, and the constant negotiation with nature's whims and of human hierarchies. Yet within it, people found moments of contentment, the satisfaction of a good harvest, the warmth of family around a hearth, the beauty of festivals, the solace of faith. Let's continue our journey, now fully in the realm of adulthood, to experience a day and a year and a life in their shoes. Village life, a peasant's day, from dawn to dusk. A rooster's crow pierces the last shades of night. In a small farming hamlet, one of countless nestled in the valleys of Japan, a new day is beginning. It's late spring. The air is cool and wet with dew. A thin mist rises from the paddies. From inside a thatched farmhouse comes the muffled sound of stirring, a cough, the shuffling of straw bedding being folded away. The peasant family that lives here is already up. In feudal Japan, sunrise is the natural alarm clock for rural folk. Lamps or candles are precious, so people maximize daylight. Our peasant protagonist, let's call him Ichiro, now a man in his late 22nd, pushes aside the sliding wooden door of his home and steps onto the earthen floor of the entry, taking a deep breath of morning air. He has been sleeping on woven tatami mats with only quilts, and those have to be stored now to make space in the one-room home. Behind him, his wife rolls up the bedding, while his mother is coaxing the hearth fire back to life, to boil water for tea. Ichiro's daily routine is about to follow a pattern unchanged for generations. Before anything else, he crosses over to a small Shinto altar shelf, kamidana, mounted high on the wall, and bows his head. On it lies a thin offering of yesterday's rice and a pinch of salt. He claps twice softly and whispers a prayer to the household gods and the local shrine's deity for a good day's work and safety. Then he might turn to the Buddhist Butsudan family, Buddha altar, if they have one, lighting a stick of incense in memory of ancestors, a quick gesture of respect. These devotions take but a minute, but they center his mind. He recalls that it is the 13th day of the 4th month by the old lunar calendar, meaning soon there will be a Buddha's festival at the temple. But today is an ordinary workday. In the dim interior, his wife brings him a bowl of warm tea, really more like a barley or buckwheat tea, since real green tea is a luxury the shogun encourages peasants to avoid. He squats by the orori, sunken hearth, for a moment to sip it. The family exchanges brief morning greetings, not the casual hello of modern times, but formal phrases like "Ohayo gozaimasu," it is early indeed, and inquiries if others slept well, a politeness ingrained in them. Their language is humble. They speak in local dialect and with respectful suffixes to elders. Ichiro's mother, though aging, is already prepping some millet porridge for breakfast. His small children rub their eyes awake. The oldest is perhaps 6, and she is already helping grandma by fetching a bucket of water from the community well outside, trotting barefoot along the dirt path with the bucket's handle clanging. There is no clock in the house. Time is told by nature and by temple bells. In Edo cities, they measure time with bells and the officially decreed unequal hours. But here, the exact hour matters less. When the sky begins to lighten, that is, dawn, and work starts. Still, larger villages or towns might have a dawn bell. In fact, not far away, at the village's tiny Buddhist temple, a monk or a lay helper strikes a bronze bell 3 times, a morning ritual that doubles as a time signal. The sound carries through the valley. Ichiro hears it and knows it's time to head to the fields. He dresses in his work clothing, a simple short kimono of homespun cotton in a faded indigo, Blue indigo dye helps repel insects, a practical choice, and he ties a pair of worn cotton leggings around his calves to protect against leeches in the paddies. Over his head he might wrap a tenugi, thin cloth towel, as a bandana to keep sweat and sun off. If it were cooler or rainy, he'd throw a straw raincoat, mino, over his shoulders. Today is clear. His wife has packed a small bundle. Inside, wrapped in a leaf, are a few rice balls, onigiri, mixed with millet, and maybe flavored with a pickled plum for his midday meal, plus a couple of radishes. Food is scarce and taxed heavily. The white rice they grow mostly goes to their lord as tax, so what they eat is often mixed with cheaper grains. Occasionally, they get to keep some rice, especially if it's a good year, but they augment it with millet, barley, or sweet potatoes. The Tokugawa authorities want them to eat millet and barley and save rice for tribute. And indeed, this family largely does so. His breakfast right now, as steaming in wooden bowls by the fire, is a porridge of millet with a handful of rice and sweet potato chunks. He, his wife, and his mother each take a few hearty gulps. The littlest child still nurses at the mother's breast. Extended breastfeeding is common since it spaces out births naturally, and supplement food is hard to come by for infants. The older kids munch on pickled daikon radish. It's not much, but it warms their stomachs. They don't linger. There is work to be done with the sun. Ichiro shoulders a light hoe and a bundle of rice, seedlings. It is late spring, the season of rice transplanting. The fields have been flooded and ploughed, already by water buffalo or ox, if available, or by manual spading, if not. Now, young rice seedlings grown in seed beds must be transplanted into the paddies. This is arguably the most labor-intensive part of the agricultural calendar, and often a communal effort. As he walks down the footpath between glistening mirrors of water, he sees his neighbors already bent over in their respective sections. Some women from the village are singing a rhythmic rice planting song to keep time as they step and plant. Yoisho, dokoisho. Their reflections ripple in the water as their conical straw hats shield them from the growing sun. The scene is timeless and beautiful in its own way. Even a modern observer might be struck by the choreography of it. Lines of planters moving backward through the flooded field, each inserting seedlings in neat rows, the mountains looking on silently. Ichiro steps into his allotted paddy. Immediately the cool water and mud engulf his feet and calves. He ties up his kimono skirt to knee level. His wife joins him. Everyone in the family who can work does. Women absolutely work the fields alongside men in peasant life. The mud is silky and squelches as they move. With practiced motions, they take bundles of seedlings and push them into the mud in evenly spaced clumps. It's back-breaking work. One must remain stooped for hours. But the villagers have done this since youth. They adjust by periodically straightening up slowly, pressing hands to the small of their back, looking around at the sky for a moment to ease dizziness, then bending again. Conversation is sparse during intense labor. Maybe a neighbor calls out, "How's the water level there?" Ichiro. He responds, "Good. From last night's rain, it's just right." Another man curses amicably at a leech on his ankle and flicks it off. They chuckle. Leeches and mosquitoes are nuisances they endure. In the distance, a cuckoo bird calls, a herald of summer, Japanese poets often noted. The farmers likely don't indulge in poetry like the educated samurai, but they appreciate nature's signs in a practical way. The cuckoo's call might mean it's near the time to plant millet. After a few hours, the sun climbs high and the day heats up. The work is sweaty now. Their towels are soaked. Around midday, they pause for a rest. The wife returns home briefly to check on the children and feed the baby, while Ichiro stays under the shade of a willow by the irrigation canal. He unwraps his onigiri lunch. It's plain, maybe dipped in some miso for flavor. He eats gratefully. Hunger is a constant companion. As a farmer, he's better fed than urban poor perhaps, but still, calories are not wasted. Every grain of rice matters. They even have a saying, admonishing kids not to leave a single grain in the bowl. While he rests, he hears laughter. A few fields over, a couple of lads are chasing a snake that appeared in the paddies, half for fun, half to kill it, so it doesn't eat frog eggs. Frogs are friends to farmers, eating pests. The midday break might include a short nap. Inamuri, dozing, is not shameful here. It's practical. Ichiro dozes on the grass for 15 minutes, straw hat over his face, recharging. He awakens to the sound of clapping wood, a hyoshigi, wooden clappers, snapping sharply. That is the signal some villages use to mark the end of the lunch break and scare any birds. Back to work. The afternoon wears on, perhaps slower. A pair of water buffalo in a nearby field snort and swish their tails at flies as they drag a plough. Those farmers started late, ploughing a second field. Ichiro's wife returned, and they managed to finish planting their section by mid-afternoon. Satisfied, they channel some water from a higher terrace to keep the field flooded. Water management is crucial. They must tend small, earthen banks to prevent leaks. As they walk back to their cottage, clothes dripping with mud, the sun is lowering. They stop at a communal well or stream to wash off the mud from their legs and hands. The wife refills her bucket to carry water home for cooking. At home, the grandmother and children have been busy too. Grandma took the kids to gather wild greens, edible herbs and mountain vegetables. In the wood's edge, maybe warabi, bracken fern shoots, and zenmai fiddleheads, or some sansai plants, to add to dinner. Sustainable foraging is part of their subsistence. The 10-year-old son also checked the family's small patch of dry field, where they grow other staples like soybeans, barley, or sweet potatoes. Perhaps he proudly brought back a basket of snap peas and burdock root. Nothing is wasted or taken for granted. Evening in the village comes slowly as the sky turns orange. Smoke curls from many huts as wives start the cooking fires. The smell of wood smoke and a hint of miso soup or grilled fish, if they're lucky that day, maybe small river fish caught by some boys earlier, wafts through the air. In Ichiro's home, dinner is modest. The base is hapajiru, a leafy vegetable miso soup made with those wild greens and radish, and a side of tofu that grandma made a couple days ago from their soybeans. Tofu is a common protein, cheap and accessible. They also have pickled turnips from a jar that's been fermenting since last season. Rice is again mixed with barley for bulk. They do have a treat. One of the kids caught a few grasshoppers in the rice field. The grandmother dry roasts them and simmers in soy sauce and sugar. Inago tsukudani, candied grasshoppers, a country delicacy full of protein. Not a morsel of protein is overlooked. Indeed, insects are part of their diet and considered normal. With a bit of laughter, they crunch these sweet savory snacks, teasing the child that he's a great hunter. Such small joys pepper their humble life. Before eating, they put a tiny portion aside for the gods on the kamidana and perhaps chant, "Itadakimasu," I humbly receive, in thanks. They eat together around the Aurori hearth, which also provides light now as dusk deepens. The room glows in flickering orange. The baby dozes in Grandma's arms after being fed porridge. The father and mother discuss the day's work, which fields to water tomorrow, if the irises are blooming, which is a sign of early summer by Boys' Day. Interesting to note if that festival is near. Possibly, they remark, we should prepare for the village shrine festival next week. Will our family offer some dried persimmons? Always things to plan. After dinner, there is still work. Tools need cleaning and storing. A broken basket mended. The wife takes some time to do a bit of spinning or weaving by lamplight. Commoners weave their own cloth, often coarse hemp or cotton if they've traded for some raw cotton. The loom stands in a corner. Click-clack, click-clack. The rhythm of weaving maybe is heard from her or a neighbor. Meanwhile, Ichiro might use the last light to check on the silkworms. If their family keeps some, sericulture was often a side activity for farmers in many regions by the Edo period. In a tray on the attic, mulberry leaves are laid out for the silkworms. He carefully changes their bedding and notes their growth. These will eventually spin cocoons that his wife can reel into silk thread, either to sell or to weave a bit of silk mixed into a festival garment. If it were winter or off-season, evenings might be when villagers gather for communal tasks indoors, like repairing farm tools or making straw ropes and sandals. They often sit around the hearth doing such handicrafts by firelight, chatting or telling stories. Tonight, though, it's planting season, so everyone's tired. Grandfather, if alive, might tell the kids a gentle folk tale to settle them for sleep. Perhaps he speaks of the old folklore, how the moon rabbits pound mochi on the moon, or about Momotaro, the peach boy who was found in a peach and grew up to fight ogres, or a local legend of the shrine's deity appearing as a white fox to help a kind woodcutter. These stories carry values. Be brave, work hard, respect the spirits. The children listen with rapt eyes, though the older ones have heard them many times and fight sleep. Night insects begin chirping outside. A little frog croak chorus starts by the paddies. It's time for bed. They have no separate bedrooms or beds. The same room is multi-purpose. The mother and grandma pull out woven tatami mats or straw mats if they have them. Poorer folk might just sleep on planks or directly on the floor around the fire. They lay out futon quilts stuffed with cotton or wool. Cotton became more available for commoners mid-Edo, which made life a touch more comfortable. The family snuggles in, usually the children and women on one side, men on the other, or all lined up. It can get cold in rural Japan at night, but the Aurori's embers provide some warmth, and they have each other's body heat. Before drifting off, Ichiro reflects on tasks ahead. Tomorrow, he must help his neighbor repair a section of the irrigation canal that leaked. They do each other favors. Yui, or mutual help, is common. Next week might be time to plant the millet on the drier slope. The Lord's tax collector is due in a month, so they must prepare the rice measure. Unseen by him, these concerns might weigh heavy on a modern person transplanted here. The tax burden can be 40% or more of the crop, fixed and unrelenting, sometimes leading to peasant rebellions in bad years. But for now, in a good season, Ichiro is simply content that his family had a decent meal and that the fields are in good order. In a final scene of the night, perhaps from outside, one looking at the village would see houses with faint glows, then one by one, going dark as folks cover their braziers or blow out candles to conserve them. The Milky Way emerges brilliant overhead. unpolluted by any artificial light, a sweep of stars that many farmers actually use to time some activities. The appearance of certain stars at dusk signaled times for planting certain crops. There's a hush except for nature's sounds. Through one open window, you might hear a lullaby, a mother or grandmother humming the famous Edo lullaby, Neneko, Onemu, Ombo Wayoi, Koda, Nene Shina. The language of the lullaby aside, the melody is soothing and timeless. Thus ends a typical day for a Japanese peasant family. We see the immense physical labor and early hours might break a modern person, as well as the simplicity of diet and lack of luxury. Yet also, we see a rhythm and community support that made such a life possible. Modern folk might miss variety or personal space, the whole family in one room always, or chafe under the strict roles, daughters expected to do X, sons Y. But here, it's just the order of things. Now, village life is not endless toil without relief. There are seasonal festivals and communal gatherings that bring joy and break monotony. The Obon festival in summer, for instance, will have everyone don a simple cotton yukata and dance the bonodori at night to welcome ancestral spirits. With drum and flute music in a carnival atmosphere, the children love catching goldfish or eating sweets if available. New Year's in winter is a time they actually rest for a few days, decorate with pine boughs, and eat special rice cakes. And there are times of relative rest in the agricultural calendar. Winter is less busy, except for handicrafts. But on average, a peasant's daily life is one of dawn to dusk work, intimately tied to nature's cycle and reliant on each family member playing their part. In comparing to a medieval European peasant's day, there are similarities sunrise to sunset, farm labor, simple food like bread versus rice, communal life. One big difference is hygiene and cleanliness. Our Japanese family values the evening wash at the well, or even visiting the public bath if there's one in a nearby town occasionally. Cleanliness has a religious aspect, Shinto, purity, and practical health aspect. European peasants in the Middle Ages bathed less often, partly due to climate and lack of tradition or facilities, often considered bathing a luxury or potential sin of vanity. In Edo, Japan, even villagers might soak in a hot bathtub at home now and then, or at least rinse daily in the river. In fact, by Edo period, public bathhouses are common even for commoners, and people bathe frequently, even daily if possible. So a modern person might find the Japanese peasant cleaner, but maybe smell more of smoke due to indoor fire. Another difference: Japanese villages had a detailed cooperative system. Many tasks, like irrigation, planting, and harvest, were done collectively under a village headman, and there were frequent gatherings to ensure everyone contributed and no one shirked, because if one fails, it can ruin the water flow or rouse official punishment. A modern individualist might find that communal expectation burdensome. You can't just decide to do your own thing. Everyone is tightly knit, for better or worse. As the village sleeps, we quietly withdraw. Our eyes turn next to a different sphere of life. Beyond the paddies, on a rise of land perhaps, stands the tiled roof of a manor house, or the silhouette of a castle keep in the far distance. That is where the lords and warriors live, a starkly different daily life from our peasants, yet interconnected. Dawn comes there too, but with other routines. The world of samurai and nobles, which we shall explore next. Duty and honor, a day in the life of a samurai. Not far from our village, across the river and past a bamboo grove, lies the castle town of the local domain. At its heart, perched on a hill, is a modest castle, wooden walls plastered white, with a stone base and a few watchtowers. Inside its gates, neat rows of samurai residences line the streets according to rank. It is early morning here as well, but life behind these walls awakens in a somewhat more regimented and refined fashion than in the countryside. Let us focus on a particular samurai. We'll name him Sasaki Taro, a mid-ranking retainer of the daimyo. Taro is about 30 years old, serving as a minor administrator in the domain's government. His day is a blend of military preparedness, bureaucratic duty, and cultural practice. The samurai caste, making up maybe 5 to 7% of the population in Edo period, lives by a strict code, Bushido, emphasizing loyalty, discipline, and honor, though in peaceful times their role often shifts to civil management. Taro's morning begins in the dark pre-dawn as well, but in more comfort than our peasant. He sleeps on tatami mats in his own house within the castle compound. His home is a one-story building with paper sliding doors, shoji, and a small rock garden. At the hour before dawn, which in Japanese timekeeping might be roughly the hour of the tiger, around 4 a.m. In summer, a wooden clapper or drum at the castle signals the approach of day. Taro's wife is likely already quietly up, lighting a lantern. She goes to stoke the charcoal in the hibachi brazier to boil water. Taro rises and kneels on his bedding to perform a short meditation. Many samurai practice some form of Zen or at least mindful breathing on waking to clear the mind. He then perhaps takes a towel and steps out to the wash basin on the veranda to perform misogi, a basic washing of face and hands, symbolically purifying himself for the day, a holdover of Shinto practice of cleansing. Next, Taro dons his clothing with methodical care. For daily wear, a samurai typically wears a kimono of good cotton or silk, depending on season, and the two-piece kamishimo if he's going to the castle, that is, a matching set of a sleeveless jacket with exaggerated shoulders, kataginu, and pleated trousers, hakama. This outfit immediately distinguishes him from townsmen who cannot wear kataginu. If it's a particularly formal day, he'll put on family crest-emblazoned garments. As he dresses, he smooths the front, where his sakayaki shaved. Portion of hair meets the tied top knot. His hair was done by a barber recently, so its neat samurai typically shaved and oiled their top half head to create that characteristic hairstyle, which kept helmets comfortable and was a status marker. Taro's wife may assist by bringing him his daisho, the long and short swords, which he will insert into the obi belt at his hip. These swords are the soul of the samurai. He perhaps does a quick mental check. Blade oiled, handle wrappings tight, yes. In Edo period peacetime, he doesn't draw them often, but the symbolism and potential is always there. Before stepping out, he bows in front of the small Buddhist altar in the tokonoma alcove, where perhaps an ancestor memorial tablet stands, silently pledging to honor his family name today. The household has a light meal before he departs. Usually breakfast might be miso soup, rice, and pickles, not too different from a peasant's, though the rice is polished white, and there might be a slice of broiled salted fish or a piece of dashimaki egg, because a salaried samurai can afford these more regularly. They might also have natto fermented soybeans, which is a common breakfast item, mixed with green onions and mustard. Taro eats fairly quickly. He's due at the morning assembly of retainers at first light. His wife packs him a lacquered lunchbox to take perhaps rice with chestnuts, some simmered pumpkin, and a treat like dried persimmons She reminds him of some domestic detail. Tonight we are expected at the Kobayashi's for little Ichiro's Genpuku celebration. He nods. He had nearly forgotten the neighbor's son is coming of age. Stepping out into the street, Taro greets a few fellow samurai neighbors. They incline heads to each other with a polite "Ohayo." The castle town is stirring. Up the slope towards the castle gate, other men with 2 swords walk, and some foot soldiers, ashigaru, and gate guards are already at posts. Peasants and merchants wouldn't be about in the samurai quarters unless serving. In fact, commoners would show deference or avoid the samurai district to prevent any trouble. The social hierarchy is visible. 2 samurai of higher rank come walking, followed by their manservants carrying ledgers and tea thermoses. Taro and others step aside and bow to them as they pass. They might be karo, elders, or officials. The high-ranking men acknowledge with the slightest nod. Even among samurai, the gradations are clear. A minor hatamoto or elder has great sway, while a low-stipend samurai, like Taro, must always show respect. At the castle, the morning begins with a form of muster or assembly in the barracks yard. Under the mild sky, perhaps 50 samurai gather by unit or role. If this were a time of war, say, Sengoku period, this might be a drill or armor inspection. But in Edo's peace, it might be more administrative, roll call, announcements. Still, every samurai continues to train in martial arts to some degree. In fact, before official duties start, Taro usually joins a sword practice session at dawn inside the dojo training hall, near the castle gates. Let's rewind slightly. Taro might have gone first to the dojo while the air is still crisp, and spent half an hour doing kata with his katana, or sparring with wooden bokken swords against a partner. The thwack of wood echoes as they exchange strikes. They could also practice archery or sojutsu, spear, depending on the day. Most domains mandated regular practice so that their warriors wouldn't grow soft. Taro enjoys this part. It clears his mind and keeps his body fit, especially after sitting at a desk on many days. After that, by mid-morning, he moves to the office quarters of the castle. His position, let's say, is in the Finance Magistrate's Bureau, Kanjabugyo's team, or something akin to a tax inspector. So he has a desk with inkstone and papers. Perhaps today, he must compile the rice tax yield reports from various villages, including our earlier village. He reads reports on how Village X's rice output was lower due to a late frost. He might have to decide whether to recommend a slight tax leniency or not, balancing the Lord's revenue needs and fairness. This is delicate, too lenient, and the Lord suffers. Too harsh, and peasants might revolt. Samurai like Taro prided themselves on Confucian ideals of benevolent governance. The peasants' welfare is the domain's foundation, but also on fiscal responsibility. He cross-references inventories, kept on wooden tablets or paper scrolls. The introduction of the abacus, soroban, from China, is a boon. He slides beads deftly to sum totals. Edo-era samurai officials were often well educated in math and literature, not just fighting. As he writes with a brush, he pauses occasionally to sip tea that a servant boy in the office has poured. Colleagues around him, all in kamishimo and swords at their side even while working, murmur softly as they discuss clan business. One might say, Lord Kato is visiting from the next province next week. We need to arrange lodging and gifts. Another is writing correspondence to a shogunate official in Edo City. The atmosphere is serious, but not tense. This is everyday governance. By late morning, Taro finishes his urgent work. He has an appointment to instruct some youth in the afternoon. Many mid-level samurai have side duties, such as training the younger pages or supervising castle defenses. So, he takes an early midday break to go home for a moment. On the way, he passes the castle armory and glances at a stack of stored spears and a display of matchlock guns, arquebuses, acquired a century ago. They are seldom used now, but kept maintained. Younger samurai are training nearby in gunnery. The boom of a gun echoes once, startling some sparrows. Taro recalls his father's tales of the last big battle they had decades ago. He hopes he never needs to use deadly force, but one never knows. There have been peasant riots in other provinces and periodic samurai revolts historically. He stops briefly at a shrine within the castle to pay respects to Hachiman, the god of war, for continued peace and strength, then heads home, where his wife has laid out his lunchbox and perhaps urges him to eat before he forgets. They exchange a few personal words, perhaps about their children's lessons or about the price of goods. Samurai stipends were often fixed in rice, so if prices rise, their purchasing power falls. A common struggle in Edo times. His wife might mention, "Tea is getting dear. Maybe we should reduce our use in line with sumptuary advice." Taro nods and suggests they substitute more roasted barley tea instead of expensive green tea to save money. After lunch, Taro goes to the military drill yard. It's his turn to oversee the Ashigaru infantry training. These Ashigaru are basically full-time soldiers of low status. Some domains made them footman samurai. Others considered them distinct. Dressed in simpler uniform, maybe wielding spears, a group of a dozen runs through maneuvers. Taro stands straight, arms folded, correcting their posture or clarifying tactics. No, hold the spear lower, like this, to brace against cavalry. He might demonstrate with firm authority. They respond with loud osu, acknowledgements. He imparts lessons that have been codified after centuries of warfare. Although major battles are in the past, every domain quietly ensures its troops are ready. One never knows with political intrigues. Taro sees a couple of Ashigaru struggling to keep pace. Later, he notes to the captain that those two need remedial conditioning. This duty done, mid-afternoon, sees him at the domain school, Hanko, where, as a senior, he sometimes lectures. Today, he meets with a class of samurai adolescents practicing calligraphy. He's to judge a poetry contest they had, copying Chinese poems or composing waka. The boys kneel and present their scrolls. He goes through them, offering gentle praise or pointing out where a character could be written with more vigor. This scholarly side of samurai life is something a modern outsider might not expect. They image constant sword swinging, but in Edo, Japan, the samurai are expected to be cultured administrators. A saying exists, bunbu ryodo, the dual way of pen and sword. Taro writes a sample verse on the board to inspire them, perhaps a classic about cherry blossom's ephemeral nature, tying it to Bushido's acceptance of transient life. The youths bow, absorbing not just writing but moral lessons. Evening comes and official duties wind down. Taro returns to his house, where his wife and maybe an aged mother have prepared dinner. Their meal has more variety than the peasants. Steamed white rice for sure. As a stipend samurai, he can eat rice daily. A miso soup with tofu and greens, maybe some grilled mackerel or dried fish, and pickled eggplant. If he's of moderate rank, occasionally they have meat, though eating four-legged animals was taboo historically. By late Edo, Some samurai took wild boar or deer as medicinal food, calling it mountain whale. But generally, fish is their main animal protein. They might also have a sweet treat from a town confectioner, mochi rice cake, with bean paste, if they splurged for a festival. His children, if any, beyond infancy, join at the low table. They might discuss the day, perhaps news. The neighbor's cousin is going on Sankin Kotai, the required alternate attendance to Edo that daimyo and some senior samurai must do. The wife might mention, "I heard Lady so-and-so is traveling with the Lord to Edo. Her entourage will pass through the high road next week." There's always some talk about the shogun's policies or local domain politics, but careful not to criticize openly. That could be treason. Instead, they might academically mention the wise saying from our Lord's mentor, "The peasants are the foundation. Treat them well." I saw that ring true reading the tax reports. Samurai wives, while mostly managing home, are educated enough to engage in such conversation. She might have read a bit of Honor Daigaku, Greater Learning for Women, which encourages women to support their husband and manage household frugality. She tells him that she repurposed some old silk kimono fabric into new cushions today, prudent and skillful. After dinner, the city is quieter. Samurai do not have to toil into the night like peasants, but many have study or guard shifts. Taro may have a night guard rotation at the castle occasionally, patrolling the compound in armor, or at least with sword ready, listening for any alarms. Not tonight, though. Instead, he spends a little time on personal cultivation. Perhaps he writes a few lines in his diary by lamplight, recording noteworthy events, or a self-reflection. Many educated samurai kept journals. Or he practices his shakuhachi flute. Music is a refined art, and a slow, breathy tune on the bamboo flute after a long day helps him find zen. The melody drifts through the paper walls, mixing with the distant bark of a watchdog and the clack of wooden night watch blocks from a town guard, signaling the hour. He might also take a bath. If his house has a wooden tub, he'll enjoy a soak, or go to the local sento, public bath, earlier in the evening where samurai and townsmen, theoretically separated by class, actually soak in equal nakedness, the bathhouse being a great leveler, though often there were separate hours or tubs for different status, to avoid quarrels, and by edict commoners shouldn't look at samurai swords, etc., but in practice they mingled carefully. Before sleep, Taro perhaps reads a few pages of Confucian text or a no-drama script under the oil lamp. Many samurai admired poetry and theatre. He recites under his breath, "The wild geese fly over the full moon. Such is fleeting life." His wife is stitching some clothing next to him quietly. In a corner, a pet cricket in a little cage chirps. Samurai kids and even adults enjoyed listening to insects as a hobby. The house is otherwise calm. One thing weighing on Taro's mind might be finances. Samurai stipends are often just enough, and they're forbidden to side jobs, though some secretly engage in trade via relatives. If he's short on cash, he might borrow from a chonin, town, merchant. Being in debt to a merchant is a bit humiliating. Merchants are lower status, but often wealthier. But it's common, as many samurai overspend their rice income. He plans to cut expenses or petition for a raise if he can demonstrate excellent service. Such worries he might confide only in his wife or diary, not publicly, as samurai are supposed to appear composed and untroubled by money. As they lie on their futon bedding, he thinks also about duty. Perhaps news of a famine in another domain reached him. He wonders if his domain is prepared to handle such crisis. Should he propose building more granaries? He feels responsibility as a retainer to ensure his lord's people prosper, the ideals of governance hammered in by Neo-Confucian schooling. He resolves to bring it up in the next meeting of officials. Thus ends a day for a mid-ranking samurai in peaceful times. Compared to the peasants, a day, it's less physically grueling but perhaps more mentally and socially stressful. A modern person might enjoy the relative comfort, better food, a bit of leisure in evening, a private house, but might struggle with the rigid hierarchy and constant pressure to maintain honor and face. One slip, an insult to a superior, a failed duty, and it could mean demotion or forced seppuku in extreme cases, ritual suicide. Samurai are expected to be stoic. For example, if his lord demanded he leave home for months or fight, he must, with no complaint. A modern person used to more personal freedom might crack under the weight of absolute loyalty and readiness to die expected of samurai. Also, consider the cultural strictures. He cannot choose to do business or farming to improve his lot. That's beneath his station per laws. He can't even marry outside his class or wear flamboyant clothes. There are sumptuary laws forbidding luxuries to samurai too, like expensive silks if he's not high rank. The flip side is pride. He has a legacy, a code of honor that gives life meaning. Cross-cultural note. Our samurai's day might have parallels with, say, a knight's routine in medieval Europe. A European knight also trained in arms, managed estates, like Taro, managed paperwork, had fealty to a lord, and engaged in courtly pursuits. But differences. European knights often were not as literate or bureaucratic. They left clerical tasks to clergy. A samurai more often is scholar-warrior combined. Also, a knight's wife might oversee a castle in his absence, but a samurai's wife often actively managed household finance and sometimes acted as a last line of defense in domestic matters. Some even learned naginata. The emphasis on art and poetry is especially strong in Japan's warrior class of Edo. A modern person might find the samurai's lifestyle in some ways like a military officer's, regimented, with privileges but heavy responsibilities. Our journey through the samurai day shows another facet of feudal Japan's challenge for a modern soul, the emotional restraint and social obedience needed. But it also shows a refined life of duty and culture that those who lived it often found profoundly meaningful. From here, we can move to see inside the castle at the top, the lord and the nobles, which is yet another layer. But before that, let's briefly touch on townspeople, life merchants, craftsmen, and religious life, because the prompt asks for different social classes, including nobles and religious figures, as well, and comparisons with other cultures. We've covered peasants and samurai. Now let's gracefully integrate glimpses of noble courtly life and monastic life. Within the castle walls, noble privilege and palace life. Beyond the samurai quarter lies the inner sanctum of the castle, where the daimyo lord and his family reside. This realm is removed from the daily grind of both peasants and ordinary samurai. It is a world of delicacy, ceremony, and high-stakes politicking. Stepping into the lord's residence, the Homaru main keep, one immediately notices the hushed, polished elegance. Tatami mats so soft, your foot sinks slightly, painted screens depicting cranes and pines, and a faint aroma of incense. Life here begins later in the morning. A lord is not rushing to plough fields at dawn. Yet his schedule is filled with formal audiences, strategic meetings, and perhaps leisure pursuits that have political weight, like hosting a tea ceremony for influential vassals. Imagine Lord Asano, a fictional young daimyo of this castle. His day might start with waking around sunrise, but he lounges a bit as attendants quietly open wooden shutters to let in the morning light on painted Fusuma panels. A personal retainer brings a tray of freshly whisked matcha tea and a small sweet to prime the palate. This is a luxury way to wake up indeed. Lord Asano sits up on his futon, which two male attendants then fold away into a lacquered chest. Unlike peasants who sleep in one multi-purpose room, the Lord has multiple chambers. A side room is dedicated as his armory, trophy room, displaying fine swords, armor sets with plumes and bows. Another chamber is a private study with shelves of Chinese classics and maps of his domain. His first order of business is often personal grooming and dressing. A barber shaves his top knot area and trims his hair perfectly. Another attendant may help him dress in lavish layers of silk kimono appropriate for the day's functions, bearing his mon crest on formal sleeves. Perhaps he wears a long trailing kamishimo that only high rank can. Each element of attire is regulated by tradition and the season. He might choose a lighter silk with iris motif because it's May. Nobles in Japan historically took great care in seasonally appropriate colors and patterns, a subtle art form. Unlike Europe, where flamboyance and jewels signified rank, in Japan it was often refined taste and nuance of color. Once dressed, Lord Asano goes to morning audience hall. Here, assembled are his top kuro, elders, and the castle superintendent. They bow deeply as he enters and takes his place on an elevated tatami dais behind a low desk. The conversation is formal and direct commands are given, but with flowery politeness. They report perhaps on an envoy from the shogun coming next month, or on progress of a castle repair. The Lord speaks in measured tones, aware that every word can signal favor or displeasure. In feudal Japan's strict hierarchy, the daimyo must display both authority and benevolence. Confucian ideals hold that a lord should be like a caring father to his domain. Our Lord Asano might say, "Have the peasants of village X been relieved of some tax due to the flood? See to it." This shows magnanimity. At the same time, he instructs a crackdown on bandits reported in the hills, order his samurai to coordinate a patrol with neighboring lords. Thus, his morning might mirror that of a small king or high official. Late morning could find him in a less formal setting, perhaps the garden pavilion hosting a learning session or cultural enjoyment. For instance, a Zen monk from a local temple might visit to share a sermon or some Chinese poetry insights. Daimyo often patronize such monks and enjoy philosophical discussions, not unlike a Renaissance lord with scholars. They stroll in the landscaped garden dotted with rocks and koi pond. The monk quotes a verse, "Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and grass grows by itself." The Lord nods, taking the lesson of wu-wei, non-action, to heart in governance. Sometimes letting things be is best. These refined interactions also help legitimize his rule by showing he's cultured and enlightened. Come afternoon, the Lord may indulge in some entertainment or practice of arts. Perhaps he practices kamari, an ancient ball game like hacky sack, with a few favored retainers in the courtyard, a genteel exercise from the courtly tradition, keeping a deerskin ball aloft with graceful kicks. Or he convenes a no-drama rehearsal in the no stage of the castle, as many lords were patrons and even performers of no. In fact, Some daimyo famously performed no plays themselves. The slow, ethereal music of a flute and drum emanates as an actor in a splendid brocade costume, and mask takes measured steps. The lord might watch from the side, appreciating the subtle storytelling. Often, these plays carry moral or philosophical weight, resonating with Buddhist ephemerality, which a war-weary ruling class found meaningful. Alternatively, if he's martial-minded, Lord Asano could ride out with a hawking party in the afternoon. Falconry was a fan's popular noble pastime, inspired by both enjoyment and training for war skills. Riding on a fine horse, accompanied by other mounted samurai and pages with hunting hawks on gloved fists, he traverses his estate's outskirts. A hawk is released to chase a pheasant. It's dramatic but silent. Everyone watches keenly as the hawk dives and captures. The lord feels the rush of primal excitement, but keeps a calm exterior, only a slight smile of satisfaction if the hunt is good. This both entertains and keeps him and his men physically adept. A scene reminiscent of European nobles hunting with hounds and falcons. But in Japan, it's done with the same ceremony as everything else, often accompanied by strict rules of where commoners can and cannot intrude. Some hawking grounds were off-limits to farmers. During these activities, servants cater to any needs: a tray with chilled barley tea if hot, or a silk haori coat if breeze picks up. The luxury of noble life lies in these attentive details and the freedom from menial tasks. However, a wise lord also knows his life is not pure leisure. It's a performance of status and a careful managing of alliances. He might have to host a banquet for a visiting official that night, which means supervising the kitchen's preparation of a lavish meal. Sake, Thai, sea bream, grilled whole, perhaps wild boar stew if it's a winter specialty, rice of course, and many small courses on elegant lacquerware. The lord might personally decide the entertainment. Perhaps geisha will perform dances, or he'll have a renowned storyteller narrate a war chronicle. It's pleasure with purpose, impressing the guest and reinforcing bonds. As twilight falls, lamplight and paper lanterns illuminate the castle's rooms in a soft glow. A scent of agarwood incense permeates, calming and rich. Lord Asano perhaps visits his inner quarters, where his wife and children reside, the oku, or inner palace. Here, it's more relaxed. His young children run to greet him. He pats their heads, a rare informality only in private. The lady of the castle, in a beautifully layered kimono, inquires after his day. She might inform him of household matters. A new kimono was finished for the daughter's upcoming mogi ceremony. The storehouse's inventory is completed by her ladies. High-ranking women sometimes managed internal storehouses and rationing for the castle staff. If the lord has concubines or multiple wives, common for air's sake among nobles, there might be a rotation in who he spends the evening with. But let's say he has one beloved wife, and they play Go, board game together, a refined pastime. She may be quite skilled, and perhaps deliberately loses close games to him now and then to flatter, or perhaps they are honestly competitive. In either case, it's an intimate moment of quiet clack of stones on wood and subtle smiles. The children might sit by learning by watching, thus continuing aristocratic tradition. Night in the castle is heavily guarded. Gates are shut. Samurai patrol corridors with lanterns and spears. The lord retires to his chambers, attended by a couple of closest guards, sleeping in antechamber, ready to respond to any emergency, and perhaps a favored page. Before bed, Lord Asano might compose a waka poem to capture a thought of the day, something about the full moon rising over castle eaves, likening it to his still absent lord, the shogun perhaps, or to enlightenment shining over turmoil. He writes with elegant brushstrokes on fancy paper, sprinkles some gold flakes for beauty. This is part art, part emotional outlet. Many daimyo were accomplished poets and calligraphers. He then lies on exquisitely soft silk futon, far beyond the coarse cotton of a peasant's futon, and drifts to sleep under embroidered quilts, secure in layers of walls and loyal retainers. His dreams, who knows, perhaps of expanding his domain, or of cherry blossoms in the capital, or of bygone battles he never fought but heard about. The noble life would break a modern person in the sense of constant formalities and lack of privacy. Every action is observed. Every word can carry weight of life and death for others. The pressure to be perfect, to maintain face and authority, is immense. There's no going out casually for a stroll alone. The Lord is always accompanied, almost deified. It's a gilded cage in some ways. Yet, compared to modern stresses, one might say he had no financial worries or mundane chores, but instead a heavy social burden. A modern egalitarian mindset might chafe at servants doing everything, and the layers of yes-men, or conversely, find it too easy to become decadent and lose perspective. Comparatively, the life of an European noble or monarch at the same time, say 17th century, might have similar opulence and ritual, like Versailles court etiquette, was extremely rigid. Both societies' nobles practiced elaborate arts. French nobles danced and fenced. Japanese nobles practiced tea and no. In a way, a feudal Japanese lord's day might be calmer because he's in his domain capital, not always in a central court, except when called to Edo for Sankin Kotai, where there they had even stricter shogunate protocols. But the overarching similarity is the hierarchical theatre of noble life, where each day reaffirms status and cosmic order. Now, on to the last class, religious figures, the monks, priests, and wandering holy people of feudal Japan. In sacred halls, the life of monks and priests. As night settles over castle and village alike, in a quiet valley nearby stands a Buddhist temple. Its bell, struck at intervals through the day, now remains silent after the evening sutras. But within the wooden halls, monks go about their disciplined routines. Even at this hour, some meditating by lantern light, some already asleep on straw mats to rise before dawn. The life of a Buddhist monk in feudal Japan is a world apart, yet intimately connected to the people, providing spiritual services and education. Consider Sogen, a middle-aged Zen Buddhist monk at a temple of the Rinzai sect not far from our village and castle. His day begins in the deep darkness long before any farmer or samurai wakes. At 4 a.m., a fellow monk walks the corridors with a wooden clacker, a gentle kinhin signal, to wake everyone for morning zazen, sitting meditation. Sogen rises from his thin bedding in the common dormitory. He dons his simple cotton robe and outer kesa mantle, meticulously, despite the dimness, as even small actions are done with mindfulness. He proceeds to the meditation hall, where about 20 monks, novices to seniors, take their places on round cushions facing the wall. They sit cross-legged, back straight, eyes half-lidded, in profound silence. Only the soft chirp of crickets and the distant drip of water can be heard. For a modern person, maintaining such stillness of body and mind for long periods might be one of the hardest aspects of monastic life. But for Sogen, after years of training, the initial ache in his knees fades, and his breath becomes his universe. They meditate perhaps for a couple of hours, sometimes punctuated by the tap of a little bell marking intervals, or the swish of the keisaku stick, used by a monitor monk to lightly strike those whose posture slumps. As a physical reminder to focus, this is done at the meditator's own signal in Zen tradition, a voluntary aid, not exactly punishment. If a modern person were here, the sting of that flat stick on the shoulder blades, swift and sharp, would certainly jolt them awake. As dawn's light appears, they transition to chanting sutras. The hall echoes with resonant, monotone chants of the Heart Sutra, or Lotus Sutra in classical Chinese or Sanskrit sounds. The rhythmic drone is oddly comforting and primes the spirit for the day. Once finished, they bow and proceed to another vital practice, soji, temple cleaning. Every monk takes up a broom or cloth. Without a word, they sweep the gardens, polish the wooden verandas, refill oil in lanterns. This is considered an extension of meditation, mindful work that humbles and grounds them. As one Zen saying goes, "A day without work is a day without food." They live it literally. After cleaning, finally around 6 or 7 a.m., comes the first meal of the day, a simple breakfast called shojin ryori, devotion cuisine. In the refectory, Sogen sits with others, each with their oryoki, nested bowls, set. The meal might be a thin rice gruel, pickled plum, some miso broth with a few vegetable scraps. Absolutely no meat or fish. Monks are generally vegetarian, though historically some laxness occurred. Strict sects adhered to no killing. They eat in silence, with rhythmic gestures. There's even a way to hold and wipe the bowl with pickled radish as a scrub. At the end, they drink the last rinse of tea water from their bowl so nothing is wasted, then dry them and pack away. This frugal fare is nourishing enough, but designed not to excite the senses. A modern foodie would be terribly unsatisfied, but a monk trains to overcome desire for rich tastes. After breakfast, the monks break into their daily assignments. Sogen, being learned and fairly senior, might teach at the temple's small terracotta school for local children in mid-morning. Imagine a dozen children from nearby villages, including some of our peasants' kids, gather in a side hall. Sogen teaches them basic writing and reading, perhaps going through the syllabary or simple Confucian sayings about filial piety. He has a gentle, yet firm demeanor. Village children squirm at times, but they respect him. Monks often were the educators of commoner children in an era without public schools, imparting not just literacy, but moral lessons and some knowledge of calendars and seasons that farmers need. Sogen might illustrate characters on paper and tell a short fable with a Buddhist moral. For example, the story of a kindly bodhisattva feeding the hungry. While he teaches, other monks tend the temple fields and gardens. They grow their own vegetables, radishes, greens, squash, to supplement alms from villagers. Some younger monks chop wood, draw water from the well, and ensure everything for the midday meal is prepared. Monastic life is surprisingly busy with labor. It's not just contemplation. They have to maintain the complex, welcome pilgrims, and manage the temple's estate. Some temples have considerable land or a small village to administer, given in feudal times by lords in exchange for prayers. Later in the day, Sogen might have duties like transcribing sutras, copying holy texts with brush and ink, a spiritual practice of patience and concentration. Or perhaps he's the infirmary monk, tending to anyone ill with herbal remedies. Temples often had basic medical knowledge and helped treat villagers using kampo, Chinese medicine, herbs, and acupuncture. A farmer might come with a festering cut. Sojin cleans it, applies a poultice of ground herbs and wraps it in cloth, all while reciting a mantra for healing. In this way, the temple provides physical and spiritual solace, a role akin to a community clinic. Come afternoon, perhaps a local samurai official visits the temple. Maybe our samurai Taro stops by to consult the head monk on an auspicious day for a ceremony, or to invite monks to bless a new bridge being built. Common to have Buddhist or Shinto rites bless infrastructure. Sojin might serve as attendant, offering the official tea and bowing, while the abbot and the samurai chat about philosophy or domain news. Monks sometimes acted as informal diplomats or counselors between lords, since they were outside feudal hierarchy and respected for neutrality. This particular temple, being Zen sect, might have ties with the samurai class. Zen was popular with warriors for its emphasis on self-discipline and acceptance of death. As evening approaches, the temple's giant bonsho bell is rung. Famously, Buddhist temples ring the bell 108 times on New Year's Eve to symbolize purging 108 delusions, but some also ring daily at dusk to signal time and call for reflection. The deep boon resonates through the valley. Monks gather for evening, chanting once more. Shorter than morning, perhaps. They dedicate merits from the day to all beings. Sogen feels the day's little aches, and tasks drift away in the reverberation of the chant. Bell. Dinner is similar to breakfast. Maybe a thicker porridge or noodles with soybeans. They eat gratefully, then have a bit of free time. Some monks study sutras by lamplight. Others do more zazen meditation on their own. Sogen might retire to his small cell and write a letter to a friend in another temple, or write in a journal about an insight he had while teaching the children, perhaps noticing the innate Buddha nature in their laughter and how unburdened they are by ego. Monks did correspond with each other, sharing scholarly notes or just maintaining spiritual kinship. By nightfall, to 9 p.m., perhaps, most are asleep. They sleep early to wake early. The temple is enveloped in a tranquil hush under the moon. Sojin sleeps on a thin futon, probably more comfortable than a beggar's mat, but far simpler than a lord's bedding. But his mind is content with that simplicity. The life of a religious figure could be incredibly challenging for a modern person because of the perit, austere routine, obedience to rules, and lack of personal ownership. Monks own almost nothing individually. No meat, no romance. Monks in these sects are celibate. Only much later, or in certain sects, like Jodo Shinshu, where priests allowed marriage. A modern person used to choices would find the fixed schedule and diet hard. But perhaps the hardest is the psychological aspect, confronting oneself in meditation daily, which can bring up discomfort or boredom or inner demons that we usually drown out with distractions. Here, none of those distractions are permitted. It's you and your mind. On the other hand, a modern stressed individual might find monastery life serene once acclimated. No emails, no rush hour, just nature, community, and a clear purpose, enlightenment and service. Comparatively, how about Shinto priests? Their life in feudal times differs. They may marry. Shinto clergy were not celibate, typically, and they are often hereditary custodians of shrines, performing rituals for harvest, rain, and community festivals, matsuri. A day of a Shinto priest might involve sweeping the shrine grounds, Cleanliness is key. Preparing offerings, rice, sake, salt, fruits, to the kami, and performing little ceremonies for visitors, like purifications, using a wavy haraiguchi wand to symbolically sweep away impurity. They likely also train apprentices, maybe their sons, and maintain shrine properties, forests, or sacred sites. On festival days, they're very busy orchestrating dances, kagura, music like drums and flutes, and leading processions. At other times, they are local counselors and record keepers. It's quieter than a temple perhaps, but not dissimilar in devotion to routine. And consider itinerant religious figures, like a wandering Miko, shrine maiden, or a Yamabushi, mountain ascetic. They roam, performing prayers or selling charms, practicing austerities in the wild, like standing under cold waterfalls, to gain mystical powers. They might visit villages to exorcise evil spirits or pray away a plague. A modern person might be fascinated but also skeptical of such roles. But in that era, they filled a gap akin to traveling therapists or spiritual troubleshooters. Now we have journeyed through birth to various stages of life in feudal Japan, from the newborn cry through childhood games, coming-of-age ceremonies, daily grind of peasants, refined obligations of samurai, luxuries of nobles, to the chants of monks at dusk. Along the way, we've made calm comparisons to analogous aspects in other cultures. Medieval Europe's serfs and lords, the Islamic scholar's day, perhaps in a madrasa, similar to monks in devotion to study, or Chinese gentry like samurai, but with Confucian scholar-bureaucrat emphasis. One could gently note, while a European medieval peasant prayed in Latin he didn't understand, a Japanese farmer might chant Namu Amida Butsu, in vernacular meaning roughly, "Save me, Amida." Buddha, with heartfelt devotion, both find solace in faith differently. A European knight hearing mass in a cathedral with organ music. Contrast a samurai hearing resonant chanting in a temple with gongs. A Muslim scholar in the Golden Age reading Aristotle in Arabic. Compare to a Zen monk quoting Laozi or Confucius at a daimyo's court. Different settings, parallel pursuits of knowledge and meaning. Finally, to tie back to why you wouldn't last a day, the cumulative effect of all these experiences is that a modern person used to comfort, individualism, and technology would likely find it overwhelming to cope with the physical hardships, the strict social constraints, and the mental demands of feudal Japan's everyday life. Whether it is enduring the unmedicated pains of childbirth and high infant mortality, or laboring knee-deep in muddy paddies under the sun without modern tools, or restraining every personal impulse to fit strict codes of samurai honor, or monastic discipline, these people's daily survival and poise are astonishing. Yet, in a gentle, almost paradoxical sense, one might also envy the clarity of their roles, the rich community bonds, the closeness to nature's rhythms that modern life often lacks. The night sky they slept under was truly dark and full of stars, no city neon to drown it. The tea they sipped was hand-whisked and savoured slowly, not a paper cup gulped in traffic. The ikigai, life purpose of each, be it to feed family, serve Lord, serve gods, was straightforward in a way, even if difficult. So, would you last a day in feudal Japan? Likely not without great shock and adaptation. But through this immersive journey, we have glimpsed not only the hardships that would test us, the hunger, toil, disease, violence, obedience, but also the beauty and spirit that sustained them, the sacred festivals, the seasonal aesthetics, the warm communal hearth, the guiding philosophies of Buddhism, Shinto, Confucianism. It was a world where every sound, the drum of taiko at a shrine, the click of wooden sandals on a bridge, the cicadas whir in summer, held significance, where every person from peasant to priest had a place in the great circle of existence, often accepted with a calm fatalism or faith that many of us today might struggle to muster. As we conclude this narration, the sounds of feudal Japan's night fade, the temple bell's last echo, a distant laugh from a farmhouse, the hush of the castle keep, all giving way to the silence of centuries past. We return to our present with deeper appreciation of how far humanity has come and how those people lived and loved under conditions we might find unbearable, yet with a resilience and grace that continue to inspire. In the end, lasting a day in their world would be a formidable trial for us, but their legacy lasts far beyond a day, carried in cultural memory, in the traditions and wisdom that still flow like an undercurrent in modern Japan, and indeed in all of us. Through the human story, we close with a bow to them and gently extinguish the lantern of our tour through time. Oyasumi nasai. Good night.